Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In this episode, we will be making this Christmas inspired dress out of this beautiful burgundy velour stretch velvet fabric. We'll start off by halvening an A4 page and sketching a quick croquis. The free template is available in the description box below. I'll first start off with pencil. When designing, I wanted a super risky slit, long arms, turtleneck, and shoulder pad action for a sophisticated look. I'm 26, so I'm wanting something sexy yet very sophisticated. Here are the main measuring points you will need to conduct. Number 1 would be the measurement from the neck to the center front bust. Then the circumference of the bust. The measurement from bust to waist, the circumference of the waist, the measurement from waist to hip, the circumference of the hips, the length measurements of the dress, shoulder to shoulder measurement, or single shoulder measurement. The height measurement of the collar in comparison to your neck, the arm length measured with a bent arm, the circumference of the arm, the armhole measurement where the sleeve will fit in, and the length of the slit. In this case, the closure of the slit. Now that we have conducted our measurements, it's now time to prep the drafting paper. Take note of the widest measurement of your measurements, then halfen the paper according to the measurement axis. We first mark the fold as center front, then the first line, which is the neck. Then measure down from the neck to the bust, then draw and label the line. Then measure down from the bust line, then draw and label the line. Then measure down from the waistline to the hips point and draft a line and label the line hips. Then measure down from the neckline down to the hem line of the dress measurement. Divide the bust measurement into two, then mark that measuring point on the bust line, which mine is 7¼ inches. And do the same for the waist and the hips. Add scrap paper on the sides if needed. After measuring these points, connect those points then measure up from the bust line 3/4 of an inch to an inch up and square. Measure from the center front line to the apex point, which is your nipple, and mark A. Mine is 3½ inches. If you have larger breasts, measure from the center front point of your bust to your nipple and use that measurement. From the apex point, measure up to the shoulder, which mine was 9½ inches, but please make sure you measure that on yourself or the client and add it to your measurement form. Square the shoulder point. From the shoulder point, measure towards the center front and mark up 1 inch. Mark down ½ inch at the other side of the shoulder and connect the lines to indicate the shoulder pad space. Use the curved ruler or armhole ruler and draft the armhole. Make sure to measure and add height on the side seam and shoulder seam to correlate with half of the armhole measurement. If you feel that it's way too complicated, take a well-fitted t-shirt and trace out the armhole, shoulder, and neckline, and adjust where desired. Then use the curve ruler to draft the neckline. Measure the neckline. Mine is 4.5.
Add height on the neckline and by the shoulder point to make the neckline smaller to fit around the neck.
And draft the rest of the one side of the dress. At the hem, mark an inch inwards and connect that point to the hip line point. And smoothen out the point by 1/4 inch. When drafting the slit, continue the vertical line of the bust and waistline and mark the point on the hips line. Then mark 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch towards the side seam. Draw the line from the hem up and then connect that line to the side seam waist point to create the curvy slit as illustrated on the design. Then mark 1/2 inch on both sides of the slit at the hem and connect those points to the hips line slit point. Measure down from the slit 10 inches and create a notch mark to indicate the start of the slit. Pin the folded drafting paper and cut out the pattern to transfer the shape to the other side. Open the pattern and cut off the one side of the slit, and remember to make a note on the pattern to add 1/2 inch seam allowance for sewing. Take another drafting paper and draft a vertical line 1 inch away from the edge of the paper and mark it center back. Align the front pattern on the line and pin down the pattern onto the drafting paper. Trace around the shape and add 1/2 inch at the armhole and zero it at the shoulder and underarm point, then blend. When drafting the back neck, mark 2 inches up and create a curve from the high point shoulder to the center back line and measure the front and back neckline. Remember to make sure it equals to the 1/2 of the neck circumference measurement. For instance, my front was 4.5 inches and my back was 2.5 inches, which made 7 inches together, perfect for a 14-inch neck circumference. Cut out the back bodice and separate the pieces. When drafting the neckband, draw a horizontal line and at one end, draw another line perpendicular to the horizontal line and label center front. Measure out the front neckline measurement from the pattern and mark the shoulder point. Then from the marked shoulder point, measure down to the back neckline measurement and draw a perpendicular line at that point. Measure up the center front line at 1/2 inch and use the curve ruler to meet at the shoulder notch point. Use the neckband height measurement and mark. At the mark, measure 1/4 inch inwards and draw a line from that point to the curve starting point. Transfer the neckband height measurement across towards the center back line and add an inch back seam allowance and blend the dots into a line and add 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then label. When drafting the sleeve, draw a long straight line down, then another line perpendicular at the one end of the line. Measure down 5 inches, mark, and draw a horizontal line on both sides of the line. Label front on one side and back on the other side. Measure the front and back armholes of the bodices and write the measurements on the sleeve drafting plan. Use your measuring tape to estimate the curve length of each side and mark at the end of the curve. Draw a straight line from the points to the top center point of each side and mark the midpoint. Afterwards, mark the midpoint of the midpoints. On the front side, measure in 1/4 of an inch. Then use the curve ruler to connect the points and create the sleeve cup curve. Take note of how the curve ruler is used when creating the curve. The ruler faces left when creating the curve from the bottom curve point to the midpoint, then flips facing right when creating the curve from the midpoint to the top point. The back curve doesn't go in, but make sure to measure the curve to match the measurements until satisfied. Measure down from the top point of the cup, 23 inches, and square. We're going to make the sleeve opening 7 inches wide because the velour fabric is stretchy. After measuring 7 inches, connect each cuff point to the underarm sleeve points. Add 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the sleeve. Cut and label. In total is the sleeve, front panel, back bodice, and back neck and side slit panel. When cutting, make sure you've identified the fabric's grain line and stretch direction, and place the pattern accurately. Remember to cut away 1/2 inch from the seam allowance as noted on your patterns. And notch the slits stops. In total, you will have 2 sleeve pieces, 2 back bodice pieces, 1 front panel piece, 1 side slit panel piece, and 2 neckband pieces. When sewing, first sew together the side slit panel onto the front panel piece, and remember to stop at the slit notch. Sew the shoulder seams of the back and front bodice together and serge. Prepare the neckband by sewing the top edge together . Then understitch the seam allowance onto one of the neckband pieces. Then sew the bands together and closed at the bottom edge of the collar. Pin the neckband onto the neckline of the bodice and match the notches on the neckband to the shoulder seams and sew and serge. Sew the sleeves onto the armholes by pinning the middle points of the sleeve and armhole together first, then the rest, and sew.
Sew the sleeve and bodice's seams close together by first pinning the underarm sleeves and then sew along the sleeve down to the bodices.
Adding a zip on stretch fabric gets tricky. Therefore, it is very important to use pins during this process. First, sew the one side of the zip down with the teeth facing outwards and make sure to not pull the fabric while sewing. Then use the pins to place the zip and match the necklines together. and close the zips to check.
Hi guys, so now that we are almost done with the dress, it's very important to give it a good fit before you finish it completely. As you can see, the arm is still a little raw, as well as I didn't put down the zip tab. This is how it looks without the shoulder pads, and as you can see, it flops around here. And my shoulder pads, I have a 1/2 inch shoulder pad, so I get 2 to make an inch. And so what you're going to do while you have it on is slip in the shoulder pad at least in one arm. You can do both for accuracy, and you adjust it. Okay, you zip it up. Alright, and now it has filled up the empty space in a way. Make sure you push it close enough to the seam allowance, because that's the seam allowance. The seam allowance will be sewn onto the shoulder pad. Then afterwards, this is where you check, okay, are you happy? So for example, my neckband is a little loose. It has to fit around this circumference of the bodice, but I'd like it a little bit tighter here so that it's like a little snug but comfortable fit. This is how it looks without it, and with a little bit of the snug look. This is when I take a pin and pin it exactly where I'd like it to be a little bit more snug. So we're going to take out 1/2 inch from the back bodice. Also take out from the top of the neckband pattern. I didn't want it too tight because I like space, like for comfort. As well as I've noticed that my arms are a little bit too loose. So this is when we also take the pin in the extra axis off. And it looks like I have to take out an inch. So we're going to take out some here from the bodice, going to the sleeve, and then zeroing it to here, because maybe 1/2 inch, so like that. Okay, and also the neckband. So I'm going to show you how to do these adjustments on a pattern next.
First, mark 1 inch inwards with a chalk and 1/2 inch at the sleeve opening. Then also 1 inch at the neckband, and blend down into the back seams and replace the zip on the back line of the bodice. After sewing, hemming, and placing the shoulder pads, here is the finished look. Now this is a fabulous, sexy, and sophisticated look to go for Christmas, with a good balance of modest and risque realness. If you like this look, please like, share, and comment, and perhaps try it yourself and DM me your results to be featured on my next episode of my new DM review series. Take a look at the previous episode of my subscribers' results, link available in description box below.